Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today, we're going to find out why your photos aren't sharp. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Welcome back to this episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you are new here, I want to welcome you. I am Raymond. I'm a wedding photographer and host of this Beginner Photography Podcast, which honestly has the best and most kind listeners of any other podcast. So if you're new, you're in good company. Now, normally we do interviews with world-class photographers, but every once in a while we take a break from the interviews and focus on education and learning a specific aspect about photography, which is what we're going to do here today. So again, if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. I hope you had a good week. I had a good week. It has been very nice outside. The weather has been nice outside here. I've been trying to get outside, have a lot of home renovation projects, working in the garden, setting up a irrigation system, and at the end of the day, you come inside and you realize, oh man, I'm sunburned. you never realize while you're out there that you get sunburned. So, just a nice friendly PSA to be sure to either put on sunscreen or aloe vera after the fact, in the very least. So, again, I hope that you had a really good week this past week. Now, I want to ask you a question now, and that is, have you ever seen a photo that has just stopped you dead in your tracks? Maybe the photo had emotion, maybe the photo had meaning, maybe the photo was a beautiful sunset or a flower or a child, or maybe it was an injustice. Whatever the subject of the photo was, I'm guessing that the photo wasn't blurry, but it was probably sharp, and you might even say crystal clear. Now, have you ever wondered how some photographers can get beautiful, sharp images? Yet when you look at your photos, you look at them and they just feel like something's missing, like they aren't living up to their full potential, like they didn't turn out how you saw the image you had in your head before capturing it. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. There are 4 real reasons why your photos may not be as sharp as you'd like. And like I said, I'm going to share them with you today so that you can start capturing the moments that mean the most to you with more clarity. So we're just going to jump right on into this. Reason number 1 is that you missed focus. So your camera, the job of a camera is to capture light. But the job of your lens is to focus that light onto your camera's sensor. 2 very different things. Camera has a job, lens has a job. Now the lens does this by moving the front element of a lens back and forth just a tiny bit. And usually, it's so small, it's less than, the amount of travel that your lens has is less than 1/4 of an inch. And when it does that to find the right distance of your subject so that it can focus all of the light coming from them onto your camera's sensor. So because your camera's lens is locked into a specific distance away from your camera, let's say for instance here, 10 feet. If your subject moves a bit closer to your camera, and now they're only 9 feet away from your camera, then they're going to be out of focus because your lens is set to be 10 feet away. Now, the exact same thing goes, if it was 8 feet or if it was 11 feet or whatever. And also, it doesn't just matter if they come closer, far away. Same thing applies. Now, that's obviously just an example, but in the real world, if you're taking a portrait of somebody, like you're close enough to where the photo is just head and shoulders, they might move as little as an inch or an inch and a half, and the photo would appear wildly out of focus. I cannot tell you how many times at a wedding I go to take a nice close-up portrait of a bride, and as many photos as I take, I'll take 10, 15, and only one of them will turn out where the eye is perfectly in focus. But normally you don't notice this when you're shooting, so you got to get quite a few options there. Now, we usually, like I said, don't realize this, but we as humans, we actually sway a little bit. So when you're standing there and you're holding the camera up to your face, you'll realize, wow, it's really hard not to move that inch or inch and a half just from the natural kind of swaying or moving of your body. So the camera is locked onto the right spot, but in this case, it's you who is moving, either closer or further away, and then that will set the photo out of focus. Now, there are many things that you can do in your camera to remedy this, from different focus modes to different focusing speeds. Some cameras even have eye tracking autofocus. So you just tell it either left eye or right eye, which is crazy, and it'll do its best to just track that eye. Oh yeah, you know what? You might have even focused on the wrong spot, like the nose instead of the eye. You know what the distance is between the nose and the eye? It's about an inch, inch and a half. So inadvertently, we're here, and when an inch and a half is all that it takes to tell if something is in focus or not, well, focusing on the eyes rather than the nose really does matter. So make sure that you got the right spot that you want in focus every time. Because early on in my career shooting weddings, there was several times where, I would use like a large tracking autofocus because I'd want my camera to track a bride as she's coming down the aisle, but it would always choose to focus on her bouquet that she was holding in her hand, which is probably like, if you're just looking at a distance standpoint, probably 8 inches in front of her face. And as she's walking down the aisle, it's going to focus on that rather than her face. And let me tell you, you can't deliver those photos. You just can't. When it's so blatantly obvious that the bouquet is in focus and she is not in focus, you can't do it. You can't do it. So that was reason number one. Maybe you missed focus. So learning focus there could be really important. All right, reason number two, this one you have a little bit less control over, or maybe a little bit more control over, depending on how you look at it. But reason number two is chromatic aberration. So remember back there, all the way back in reason number one, when I said that the lens's job is to focus the light that comes into it onto your camera's sensor. Well, how well that lens is built and the materials that it is made out of can alter the effectiveness of how well that lens can focus the light. So, real quick, we're going to have some fun here. We're going to go back to high school science class, all right? Now, we know that light travels in different wavelengths, and that is how we get color. You can see a visual example of this on Pink Floyd's album cover, Dark Side of the Moon. What we see is a single beam of light going through a piece of glass, and the glass, depending on its shape, can alter the color of that light. So you may have noticed that when it comes to lenses, there can be several lenses that seem to be the same, but have just wildly different price tags, and you have no idea why. So we're going to take Canon, for example, as they got the Goldilocks effect going on. They got 3 options for you: good, better, and best. So they have 3 different 50 millimeter lens options. One for $125, another for $350, and another for $1,500. All of them the exact same focal length. If you put each one of those lenses on a camera and you look through it, it would be the exact same frame every single time. The main difference between the lenses is the construction and the material used. So the $125 version it's all plastic lens elements. In fact, one of its nicknames is the Fantastic Plastic. whereas the $1,500 version is made entirely of glass. Now, with glass, you can simply get a much more precision, you can just get more precision, and you can get much more precise in the shape of the light that comes in through it and then out the other side than you can with plastic. With plastic, the wavelengths can separate just slightly enough to cause an effect called chromatic aberration. See, we circled all the way back. Reason number 2, chromatic aberration. So, you can see what chromatic aberration looks like if you're using a lens like, the fantastic plastic or the stock lens that came on your camera. You can see what this looks like, what chromatic aberration looks like in the high contrast portions of your image. So 9 times out of 10, that's going to be where the edge of your subject, is obviously going to be darker. They have dark hair. They, just have an outline, whereas the background is going to be blown out. Whether it's the sky, it's going to be all white. There's going to be a clear transition between their face and the background. And that is a high contrast situation. So what you're going to see is that around the edge of your subject, there's going to be either a slightly green or magenta halo around them. Now, because the edge has a color shift, either green or magenta, the image will appear soft and not sharp. So when in fact, you may have got the focus right, and it actually may be a sharp photo. But because of the chromatic aberrations, the image appears soft. Again, this is common with many entry-level lenses, as they just tend to use more plastic elements to keep production costs down. When you keep production costs down, you can sell the lenses for cheaper. Now, I actually put together a list, a free download, just for you with the 5 best lenses that I recommend for wedding photography that you can actually download in the show notes of this episode right here. So just go to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and you'll see the link to this episode right there on the homepage. Now, that is this whole reason, right? Chromatic aberration is one reason why many professionals, myself included, recommend that when it comes time to upgrade, when you think to yourself, you know what, I think I'm ready for the next step. That's why it is 9 times out of 10 recommended that you upgrade your lens rather than upgrading your camera body. I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear. You wanted to hear all the cool tech and, new specs of a new camera instead of just buying, a glorified window that you put in front of your camera. But when you buy good lenses, they last for multiple camera bodies. My lenses that I bought for my cameras, I bought them 7 years ago maybe, and I'm still using them. Whereas I've upgraded the camera 2 or 3 times now. So they last. And I have no intention of upgrading my glass. No intention. All right, so that was reason number 2. Reason number 1 was you missed focus. Reason number 2 was chromatic aberration. And reason number 3, you have too high of an ISO. So ISO is the term for how sensitive your image sensor is to the light that enters your camera. Now, the higher the ISO, the more sensitive your camera is to light. This is great. This is useful in low light situations where you just need some extra help to gather the light. This allows you to capture photos in less light. Now, one of the trade-offs is digital noise. Now, this would be the equivalent of film grain back in the day. If you were shooting film, this is the equivalent of film grain. Now, if you remember shooting film, the higher your ISO, or ASA, when it comes to film, the grainier the image. So when you have a sporadic grain pattern, then the edge of your subject would appear soft and not sharp. So once again, just like the chromatic aberration example, your photo could be sharp, but the grain makes the image look as if it's not. And truth be told, I personally would rather have a grainy photo rather than a blurry photo. And the blur from, too slow of a shutter speed is much more, or it has much more of a negative effect on your image than a high ISO. Now, what's a high ISO? Well, I can't tell you. It really depends on your camera. As my first camera, my first digital camera, the Canon Rebel XT, I would say that the noise became very visible at ISO as low as 800. Whereas today, on a camera that I have, I can shoot up to 8,000 and feel comfortable with still delivering that image to one of my couples. So it gets better over time, and it really depends on your camera. You just have to guess and check for yourself. But this problem of grain becomes even more amplified when you're using entry-level lenses like the ones that I was talking about earlier with plastic elements, because now your photo has two sources that can cause softness in your image. Okay, reason number 4. And I just kind of alluded to this just a second ago, but it's motion blur. So I saved motion blur for last because in the last 4 years of hosting this podcast, I have had many photos sent to me from listeners just like you, asking for advice, and this is one of the biggest problems that I see. Motion blur is when your subject, whatever you're photographing, a child, family member, a bird, whatever, when they are moving faster than your camera settings can capture them, causing them to look blurry in your final image. Now, this is caused by using the wrong shutter speed. So maybe a light bulb just went off in your head. Oh, great, Raymond, since you're asking, what is the right shutter speed then? What shutter speed should I be using to make sure that I don't get any motion blur? And honestly, I really wish that I could answer that question on this podcast, but I can't. It's kind of like answering, or being asked the question, how much does somebody need to eat? Well, it really depends. It depends on their age, it depends on their size, it depends on their weight, their hunger, metabolism, goals, activity level. It's not a simple answer. Your exposure settings will change depending on several variables, but when you get started, it's mostly just going to be on the amount of available light. So earlier, when I said that motion blur is one of the biggest problems that I see in photos that listeners send me, 4 times out of 5, the photos were shot in auto or another program mode on their camera. So when you shoot auto or another program mode on your camera, the camera, makes the majority of the decisions when it comes to exposure. And exposure, if I didn't explain it, is just simply how bright or how dark your photo is. So it's the camera, if you're shooting in auto or in a program mode, it's your camera that is choosing a bad shutter speed, causing you to have motion blur, causing your image to not be sharp. Now here's a sad thought, all right? As advanced as cameras are getting, and they're getting very advanced, they have no idea what it is that you're shooting. Zero clue, no idea. Maybe you're photographing your kids. Maybe you're photographing a sunset. Maybe you're photographing a maternity, session for your friend. Each of these require totally different settings, even if they all have the same amount of light. So with a sunset, you want it underexposed to retain all the deep, beautiful, saturated colors. Whereas if you're photographing your child in front of a sunset, you would want them properly exposed, which would blow out the sunset. Otherwise, they would just be a silhouette. But since cameras have no idea what you are photographing or the image that you see in your head that you're trying to capture, that you clearly see right in front of you, Because the camera has no idea what you're photographing, it chooses the camera settings based on simply how much light is available. Now on the surface, again, this sounds fine. But for a sunset, you would want the whole scene in focus. When you're photographing your kids, you'd want a higher shutter speed since they move fast. If you're shooting a maternity session, you're shooting maternity photos for a friend, then you want the images to be brighter than the camera would choose to add more of a light and airy and, comfortable vibe. When it comes to exposure settings, ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, there are you ready for this? It took me a while to figure out this math. 388,944 different combinations of camera settings. Again, there are 388,944 different combinations. And that means that there are 388,944 different situations that you could be in and have an entirely unique set of exposure settings that are perfect for that exact situation. And your camera has to pick one of them as fast as humanly possible. It is no wonder why when your camera is in auto, it gets settings wrong so often. When you're shooting in auto, your photos will look exactly like everyone else who's shooting in auto because everybody else's camera is trying to do the exact same thing. Now, I want you to do me a favor real quick, okay? This is gonna be fun. Wherever you are, raise your hand if you bought a nice camera to take the same photo as everybody else. All right, let me see. I see 0. No one. I see no one. Nobody is raising their hands. Wonderful. Okay, great. Now, raise your hand if you bought a nice camera to capture beautiful, compelling, really sharp images. Wow. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. That's a lot of you. Okay, there you go. The truth is, you simply cannot do that in auto mode. Then Raymond, okay, how do we do it? You have to take control of your camera and the exposure settings that are perfect for whatever you're photographing. And to do that, you need to be shooting in manual. Okay, but Raymond, with 388,944 different exposure options, that sounds really confusing. And yeah, I will be honest, if I was faced with that many choices, I would feel very overwhelmed and I would probably just go take a nap. I'm serious. That's overwhelm if I've ever heard of it. But see, a camera, here's the thing, is a really simple tool when you know how to use it. And even with the most basic understanding of what your settings do, you can narrow that 388,944 options down dramatically in just a second or two, down to 50 or 60. You spend 2 more seconds, and then you narrow that down to just 3 or 4. Blink of an eye. 3 or 4 seconds this whole thing takes. 1, 2, 3, 4. You just narrowed down 388,944 options down to 3. And then you will know that your settings are perfect for the scene that you want to shoot, the way that you see it in your head, and not just according to your camera's light meter. So let me ask, would you like me to show you how to take control of your camera and shoot in manual mode? Now, if you're listening to this podcast, you're listening for a reason. You want to learn photography. You want to take amazing photos. You want to capture the world. But maybe right now you feel uncertain. You feel uncertain that you bought the right camera and that it might be holding you back. You feel stuck. You know that your camera can take great images, but it's not. And you don't know what the best move is to move forward. Or maybe you feel tired of watching countless YouTube videos and then at the end just feeling even more overwhelmed. You want more. You want somebody to give you an easy to follow, step-by-step plan to learn photography and unlock the full potential of your camera by shooting in manual that is written in plain English. Now, the way I see it, there are really two types of new photographers. Those who push off learning how to use their camera and just simply continue to spray and pray, hoping for a good photo, but then ultimately feel disappointed when they're not able to capture any emotional moments. Or those who 100% commit to learning how to master their camera's manual mode and be able to shoot captivating images with intention, not confusion. And if that's you, I want to invite you into my newly updated online educational course, Auto to Amazing. Auto to Amazing is the fastest way to master manual mode, guaranteed. It is the only program of its kind that not only shows you exactly how to know what settings to change, but why. By the end of the program, you will have taken your first photos in manual with total clarity, be able to nail exposure quickly, even in fast-paced environments with poor lighting. Learn what settings you need to change to get sharp images. Know how to find and utilize lighting in a way that makes your photography work. Leverage a mix of technical and artistic abilities to create beautiful images. Understand when and why to change what camera settings, and have confidence in your camera to be able to capture the shot when the moment arrives. There are 5 modules and more than 20 video lessons in Auto to Amazing. The first module is all about understanding exposure. Again, how bright or how dark a photo is. In this module, you will learn how to shoot in manual right away. Module 2 is mastering compositions, or how you frame your image, as that has a huge impact on how your viewer perceives your photo. Module 3 is learning to see light. I will take you on location with me as I shoot in tricky lighting situations to show you how to always find the best light. Module 4 is build your own photo exercises, where I give you an exercise that is designed to tie your understanding of your camera settings together. And Module 5 is a tech library full of videos to walk you through all the extras. Now, Auto to Amazing is a value of $197, but I got some bonuses to throw in when you enroll. The first bonus is my popular Conquer Your Camera Field Guide, which is a physical set of laminated cards full of the most used photo tips and tricks that you can attach to your camera bag or strap so that you can always have it with you when you're out shooting. And that is a value of $29. Listen, I am not special. There is nothing special about me that allows me to capture sharp and compelling images. I don't live in a tropical location of natural beauty. I don't have a never-ending flow of cash to buy all the best gear the second that it comes out. I shoot my weddings on a 4-year-old camera. I simply have a proven method that took me more than 10 years of shooting to develop and boil down into just 4 steps. And these are the same 4 steps that I use every time I shoot in manual. You can do this. Now, bonus number 2, when you join Auto to Amazing, is you will get access to the students-only Facebook group with 8 weeks of community and accountability with 2 live group Facebook Lives where I'll come on and answer all of your questions. Access to the Facebook group with the 2 Facebook Lives is a value of $349. Quickly, I want to make you a promise. I will teach you photography and how to shoot in manual. In fact, I am so sure of this that if after 30 days you did the work, you went through the course, and you still don't feel confident behind the camera shooting manual, I will give you double your money back. That is how confident I am in this program and its ability to teach you photography. Now, to sweeten the already pretty amazing deal that is Auto to Amazing, I'm throwing in one last bonus here, and it is a two-parter. When you enroll in Auto to Amazing, you will also get access to my course, Edit on the Go with Lightroom CC, and my course, Bulletproof Photo Backups. After you take your newfound photography skills out and you start capturing beautiful images, you will need to find a way to edit and keep your photos safe. So I got you covered with access to the additional courses. Now that is an additional value of $97, bringing the total value of Auto to Amazing to $672. All that, and you're probably thinking, okay, Raymond, give us the price. Now, you're likely thinking that I'm going to be charging hundreds of dollars for the program, and the truth is, I probably should, as the results that you can get out of this course, learning manual in such a short amount of time, is huge. So when I told other photographers in the industry about the course, hands down, they all said that I should be charging at least $300. However, I know my community pretty well, and although you are incredibly serious about learning photography, that price point would be tough for many of you. So what I did was I cut it in half to an everyday price of $157. Because I want this program to be affordable to you. That's why I decided to price it much less than I likely should. But I want you to be able to enroll today. I want you to jump in and start learning photography. Now, by being here, being a listener of the podcast, you have proved to me that you want photography to be an important part of your life. And that is why I'm taking an additional 40% off just for you, bringing the total price down to just $94.20. That's Auto to Amazing, the Conquer Your Camera Field Guide, the Students Only Facebook group, the additional two courses, Edit on the Go with Lightroom CC and Bulletproof Backups, all for just $94.20. So if you are ready to learn photography, you can sign up right now by clicking the link in the show notes or by heading over to bit.ly/A2A photo. That's bit.ly/A2A photo. That's the number 2. The number 2A. Auto to Amazing. A2A photo. Enrollment closes next week, which is Wednesday. That's the 24th at midnight Eastern Time. So don't wait. Enroll right now while it is still fresh in your mind. That's bit.ly/A2A photo. Or just click on the link in the show notes. Now, you might have some questions. Questions like, Raymond, I don't know if my camera is good enough. And I'll tell you that if your camera will allow you to switch lenses, then your camera is good enough. In this course, I actually use a 6-year-old Canon T5 to prove that anybody can learn manual mode, no matter their camera. I've got you covered. Or maybe you're thinking, I'm overwhelmed, there just isn't enough time. And I get that. Auto to Amazing is designed specifically with speed and implementation in mind. I know how hectic it is being a parent. Add studies or a full-time job? That is why this course has no fluff. It is packed dense with the info that you need right now to start. You'll also have lifetime access to go at your own pace, learn whenever, or wherever with the mobile app as well. Or maybe you're thinking, well, what's wrong with my photos that my iPhone takes? Now, the iPhone has evolved into an amazing camera over the years. There's no denying that. But it lacks several things that, even put up against the most basic entry-level DSLR, the DSLR will be miles ahead of the iPhone. And these are things like image quality, resolution, lens selection, and of course, full manual control of your image. Maybe you're thinking, I don't know where to start. I feel like I may be overcomplicating things. Well, guess what? I have you covered. When you enroll in this course, Auto to Amazing, I will show you step by step how to use your camera. There's no fluff, there's no guesswork, there's no rock left unturned. You can go at your own pace, step by step, And with the bonus Students Only Facebook group, you will be able to ask questions during the 2 Facebook Live Q&As if you have, a specific question about your camera or a situation that you find yourself in. When you finish the course, you will have so much clarity on your camera settings, you'll wonder why you waited so long to try it. Don't worry about overcomplicating it. I won't let you. So if you are ready to take control of your camera, take photos with meaning, take photos that will tell a story, take photos that are sharp and beautiful, then head over to bit.ly/A2A photo. Enrollment closes June 29th at midnight, so enroll now. Again, that is bit.ly/A photo. I want you to achieve your goals in photography. I want you to see a photo in your head and use your camera as a tool to capture it. I want you to feel like your camera enhances your life and the lives of others. Your camera should never confuse, complicate, or overwhelm. If you want that too, I really hope to see you inside Auto to Amazing. So that is it for this week. Until next week, I want you to make do. Make more, do more, and make do with the gear that you got, because I promise you, it is better than you think. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.